Hello everyone and welcome back to this short Alekhine saga, basically the saga consisting of only his performance of the Remo tournament of 1930. We entered the round 5 game, and here world champion at the time Alexander Alekhine faces the great Hungarian master Geza Maroczy. And okay, Maroczy was already 60 years old at the time this game was played, so he wasn't considered a world elite. At the time, maybe some 25 years ago, he was definitely considered a world elite and a possible contender to the crown. Not during the Alekhine era, but during the Alaska era, definitely, and maybe for some part of the Capablanca era as well. He's an exceptional player, an exceptional positional player, and Alekhine thought as much when talking about Geza Maroczy. Unfortunately, we haven't covered a lot of games by Maroczy on this channel. I actually only covered one, and it was some 7 years ago. It was his most famous game, the Maroczy Melody, and if you haven't seen it, will be the first link in the description below. So just in case you want to see how strong Maroczy was, check out that game and you will have a very, very clear idea. Maybe even before continuing this video will be the first link in the description below. Let's go into this one. And also I just wanted to share something with you. I don't think I've ever shared this. Let me just load that up. I have it somewhere here. It's a pretty funny photo of Maroczy playing, not Alekhine, but Maroczy playing against let me just check if this is it. Sorry, just give me a second. Yeah, there we go. So it's Maroczy playing against Capablanca. I don't know the year or where it was played, probably somewhere in England. But this is Maroczy playing against Capablanca, but they're not playing chess. They're actually playing something that bear the name double chess. And it had more squares. As you can see, it's a bigger board. It's not 8x8, it's 12 times 16, but I've read that it can also be, of different dimensions. And it's very, very different. So you have to accommodate additional pieces on the board, and not usually, each player will get 2 sets of pieces. So you will not have 16 pieces a player, you will have 32 pieces of player. So, I thought you guys would enjoy that. Very, very cool photo. But let's return to this game. Alekhine has the white pieces, and he opens with pawn to d4. And as usual in those days, the standard Queen's Gambit declined is what all the fuss was about. d5, pawn to c4, pawn to e6, knight c3, and knight to f6. So the Queen's Gambit declined is on the board, and we have something. It's going to be a variation that I don't know if it bears the name, that name now, but when I read about this variation from books, as I never knew how to play against d4 openings, I learned that this was called sort of the Capablanca's unburdening system or deburdening system. I don't know how to say it in English. But okay, bishop to g5, pinning the knight. We have bishop to e7, e3, and knight b to d7. We have knight to f3, castles kingside, and now rook to c1. We have pawn to c6, so everything that you would see in pretty much any other game. Bishop to d3, and here comes Capablanca's system. D captures on c4, bishop captures, and now knight to d5, offering some trades and also just making it very clear what you're planning to do, and making it very natural for you to develop your pieces. So bishop captures, queen captures, knight to e4, avoiding some further trades, and now pawn to b6, preparing to develop the bishop and also get the rook into the game, and also strike with c5 when the situation is right. We have castles by Alekhine, bishop to b7 by Geza, and now knight back to g3. We have pawn to c5, pawn to e4, attacking Geza's knight on d5, and knight 5 to f6, and it is now, as of move 14, that this position has never been reached again. So okay, we have rook to e1, and c captures on d4. We have bishop to b5. If you recapture right away, especially if you recapture with the knight to e5 is looking a little bit weird already, the rook coming to d8. So Alekhine throws in a Zwischenzug, bishop to b5. He says, I will win the pawn back later. And he is inviting queen to b4. After queen to b4, it's sort of unclear what Alekhine wanted. I'm sure Alekhine had a very good idea. But Geza, not looking for adventure, just continues with rook f to c8. Offers a rook trade, and Alekhine wins the pawn back. Queen captures on d4. rook to c5, and now bishop captures on d7. We have knight captures on d7 and pawn to b4. It's very rare to see an Alekhine game where he doesn't play pawn to b4. We have rook captures on c1, rook captures rook to c8, offering a trade of the other set of rooks. We have rook captures on c8, bishop captures, and now queen to c3. Improving the position of the queen, threatening the bishop on c8, and this is the position. The material is equal. It's two knights versus a knight and bishop. Can Alekhine push for more than a draw here? Obviously, he is the favorite. He is the world champion. So can he, win this on demand or by force? So let's see what happens. We have queen back to d8. Geza just nicely defends the bishop. Knight to d4, now threatening knight to c6, which will go a long way. Bishop to b7, stopping that, and now pawn to f3, just strengthening the center and saying my two knights are better than your knight and bishop, unless this bishop really finds a way to be useful. So okay, we have knight to f6 and knight to f1. We have knight to e8 and now knight to e3. Alekhine centralizing his knights. Pawn to a6 and pawn to a4. We have pawn to h6 and pawn to h3. Both players create some breathing room for their king. Pawn to h5 and now pawn to a5. Alekhine trying to create some weaknesses on the queen side. B captures, and now queen to d6. Geza also centralizes his queen. We have knight to b3 and now bishop to c6. Okay, so what can Alekhine do? Is there a way to push for something here? Well, he plays pawn to e5. It does grab more space and locks in that knight on e8, but also it frees up the light square bishop a little bit. We have queen back to c7. You have to guard the bishop, and luckily there is no way to add another attacker to the bishop. Or rather, there is, but you don't really care. If you attack the bishop either just moves or queen captures on e5. So it's a very, very a tricky maneuver. If knight captures, then queen captures queen, and if queen captures, then both of the knights are undefended, so you can't really do that. So knight to c5, Alekhine adds a knight, putting pressure on that a6 pawn, and Geza plays bishop to b5, just defends the pawn, and now also you have to be worried, you have to worry about not blundering your queen. So e5 is also weak. Alekhine defends it, pawn to f4, and now queen to d8, and pawn to f5. You could also play knight to e4 to sort of prepare pawn to f5, but Alekhine strikes right away. Pawn to f5, e captures on f5, knight captures. Now you have to be very, very careful. Luckily, the knight is on e8, guarding the g7 square. Queen to g5, now putting pressure on the knight, and of course knight to d4. We have knight to c7. Geza gets the knight into the game. Also, if you capture on e5, it's not really all that impressive because there's knight captures on b5, and you can just resign. You just blunder the piece, and your queen is hanging. And also the queen on c3 is defended. So after knight d4, we have knight to c7, and now knight back to f3. Attacks the queen, queen to f4, and king to f2. And it doesn't seem like Alekhine is able to create some chances against Geza. And like I said in the previous videos, I'm very sorry I don't have the clock times for these old games, even though they would mean a lot, but, you know, we'll just have to make do. We have queen to f5 and queen to d2 now, preparing queen to d8 with check, so king to h7, and now knight to e4. Here Alekhine shows what he's all about, and now the knight, of course, cannot be captured, but that's not the point. The point is that the knight is coming to d6, and it cannot be stopped. Of course, if you capture, knight g5 is check, winning the queen. How are you stopping knight to d6? It will come with an attack on the queen and the bishop, and Geza was a bit reluctant to bring the knight back to e8 as, well, the queen can put pressure on the knight, even though it's defended by the bishop, but the two knights will also have their say, and also the knight just came from e8, so of course you want to keep it active. So here he goes knight to e6, he allows knight to d6, and that is exactly what Alekhine plays. Without this move, Alekhine could not try for advantage, but as we've seen so far in the game, Alekhine will try pretty much forever until Geza gives him some sort of a chance. We're attacking the queen, and where do you go with the queen? It's not a lot of squares. You could offer a queen trade, but the endgame is much better for Alekhine. So Geza tries queen b1 with some queen to f1 check, maybe possible, but again, after king g3, not a lot to be done there. And the real threat, of course, wasn't to capture the f7 pawn that Geza allows. The real threat is knight captures on b5, and that creates a nice passed a pawn for Alekhine. So here, queen to b1, and Alekhine has nothing better than to capture the free pawn. Knight captures on f7, bishop to c6, or again, queen f1 check, we said that king g3, and there's no good follow-up. So here, bishop to c6, and now knight 3 to g5. With check, knight captures, king to g6, and now pawn to h4. So the knight is defended, f6 is covered, f7 is covered, h7 is covered, and also, well, h6 is not covered, but it's as good as covered because, you know, a lot of X-raying action if the king touches the h6 square. So the black king can only go to f5, and that is exactly what Geza does. King to f5. And now that you look at this position, we're definitely not looking to go into an endgame here. Absolutely anything can happen here. But we have to agree that the knight is a little bit stronger than bishop, even though the bishop is operating on this long diagonal, and also Alekhine is just up a pawn. So pawn to e6. We have queen to b5, and now queen to c2 with check, king to e5, and now queen to c3 with check. e7 would have been better here, but almost impossible to calculate why. We have queen to c3 with check, king to d6, and now queen to g3 with check, king to d5, and queen to f3 with check. Alekhine just looking for ways to make life a little bit difficult for Geza. We have king to e5, and now queen to e3 with check. And the move you have to play here is the move you had to play all along, and that is king to f5. But Geza plays king to f6, and now Alekhine is completely winning, but he doesn't find it. Well, not entirely. I will allow you guys to find it, just to see if you guys are able to calculate better than Alekhine. Feel free to pause the video and try to find the best continuation for white while I give you a couple of seconds. So, for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on spotting a line even the great Alekhine missed. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is queen to c3 with check. No doubt the first move you guys thought of, but the important move is what happens after this check. Of course, you cannot go to e7, that allows queen captures on g7. So, king to g6, you have to defend the pawn. And now comes the move that even Alekhine missed. Alekhine played pawn to e7 here, but the move is actually knight to f3. With knight to f3, that is just impossible for black to make a move. Imagine if it was white's move. You just play queen captures on c6. And if queen captures, knight e5 check, you pick up the queen and that's it. Or even just knight e5 check right away works both ways. So best black would have here is to play bishop captures on f3. And after g captures, no good way to stop the promotion of this pawn. Something like queen to f5. Okay. You will put some pressure on that white king, but after queen to c6, you control everything. You either pick up this pawn and then promote this pawn into a queen, or you allow queen captures on a6, but then, of course, this comes with check, and it's instant game over. So after king to g6, pawn to e7 was played by Alekhine, and now queen to d5 still holds somewhat. Well, you still have to suffer for a very long time, but you do force the knight to go back to f3 to stop queen captures on g2. But here, queen to f5 check was played, and now it's much easier for Alekhine to win this. He plays king e3, and now bishop to e8, and now what did Alekhine play here? I'm sure you guys can spot this one even without pausing the video, as you guys are amazing players. So we're not gonna ask you. The move, of course, is queen to d4. A beautiful centralizing move that says, how do you stop queen d6? We already said that all of the squares are covered, except the f5 square, and the black queen is occupying the f5 square. And what makes it even worse, let's say go king to h6, you want to protect your king with g6. It doesn't work because after queen d6 check, yes, you can play g6, but now queen d4 back again, and there's no stopping queen h8. You cannot go g7, and you cannot go h7, so it's game over. So after queen to d4, bishop to b5 was played. Geza is out of moves here. He has to play something. Bishop to b5 was played, and now Alekhine just finishes it off nicely with queen to d6 check, queen to f6, and now a nice knight to e4. And he was in this position on move 58 that Geza Maroczy resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. The queen is hanging. You cannot move the queen away from the defense. Well, the queen is pinned, and once you capture and knight captures, there's the problem of the queening square being defended, and also knight captures on b5 is coming. And also you cannot play king to f7. So, you know, all of that combined, you will just capture. You cannot capture back because the pawn queens, so you have to capture the pawn, and now whatever, really just knight captures. You have an extra piece, you have a passed pawn. This is completely winning. So yeah, amazing game by Alekhine, you know, strong arming Geza like this, even though Geza played the opening perfectly. He played the middle game pretty much, you know, perfectly, but, you know, maybe a couple of concessions were made, and Alekhine took advantage of those, and, well, in those days, Alekhine, you just couldn't give him that much, and he grabbed the full point, as he did in pretty much all of his games. If you're just joining us, these are the final standings. You can see that Alekhine won the tournament with 14 out of 15 undefeated, the only player without losing a single game, 13 wins, 0 losses, and 2 draws. And yeah, completely obliterated everyone. Geza Maroczy also not doing terrible in the mid of the table, 7 and 5 out of 15, so he's on 50%. But yeah, although he played really well, it was not nearly enough to you know, stop the great Alekhine. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I think we're pretty much done with all of these longer games from the tournament. I think the ones that are left are more tactical. So maybe, you know, if you're not into positional play, maybe you guys will enjoy those more. But yeah, this is pretty much what we will be doing until the start of the Tata Steel, and then we'll be covering that. And okay, I've been covering a game per day, but I will try to cover more than a game per day if I manage. So yeah. Hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank William Fuller, Timothy Rosen, Mark Henley, Brennan, William Smith, and Brian Baker for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check upon your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.